Hey, John, welcome to the Focus on Winning podcast. So glad to have you here.
I am fired up to be here. Welcome from Puerto Rico, where the sun is shining and the birds are singing.
Love that, brother. So, today we are going to talk about the journey to 1 million podcast listeners. So, it's basically about how to grow a podcast, right? So, before we dive in, I want to start off with mistakes people do when growing a podcast. So, what are some of the mistakes you see maybe amongst your students or clients do?
Listen, the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to starting a podcast is they don't have a niche within their big idea. So if you want to create a podcast that's going to last the test, of time, you're going to have your big idea, something that you're passionate about, that you're curious about, that you're excited about, but also that you're going to add knowledge, value, and skills to the world in. So it's valuable and you're excited
Mhm.
about it. You need to have that combination. But that's just not enough, just having this big idea, because then people come out with their big idea saying, I'm going to interview successful entrepreneurs and share their story. And it's like, that's
Mhm.
been done. That's a saturated topic. You can't just say, I'm going to create the next Amazon and think you're going to out Amazon. Like, that's been done. So what is the niche that you can niche down into within your big idea that's unique, that hasn't been done, that's going to serve a need that your audience needs to be filled, that's not currently going to be served? Back in 2012, guess what? There were 0 daily podcasts interviewing
Mhm.
entrepreneurs. I became the first daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. So from day
Mhm.
one, I was the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. I was the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. I was the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. That's why I won. How are you going to become the best day one? By niching down into something that people aren't doing right now, serving one specific need and crushing it. So that's the biggest mistake that people make, not doing that.
So, but it's more about of a launching part. How about the growing part?
So you want to now talk about growing your podcast?
Uh, I want to grow a podcast.
But is that your question to me right now? How do you grow your podcast?
Yeah, I mean, like some of the mistakes people do when growing their podcast.
So one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're growing their podcast is they think that people are just going to find their show. They think they're just going to create a show. They're
Mm.
going to do great content. They're going to interview great people, and that people will find them. And guess what? Some people will find you. But if you want to really grow your audience in a meaningful way, you need to go where current podcasters already are. So where are current podcasters? They're listening to other podcasts. So why do you think
Mm.
I spend one day every single month being a guest on 20 other podcasts? I commit an entire day every single month to being on 20 other podcasts. I make
Wow.
multiple millions of dollars per year. My time is
Mhm.
very valuable. And if I think it's worth my time to be on 20 other podcasts like yours right now, believe
Mhm.
me, it's worth your time as well. So you need to go out and find other podcasts that are in your niche, and you need to successfully pitch yourself as a podcast guest to be on those shows. Because guess what? A lot of people that are watching this right now, they're not going to like me, and that's okay. A lot of people that are watching this
Mhm.
right now, they are going to like me. And those people are going to want to come and listen to my podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, because the average podcast listener listens to 7 podcasts. So if I can become one of the 7 podcasts they listen to by being a guest on your show right now and providing value to your audience, it's a win. So I've been doing this now for 8 years. I've been saying yes to being a guest on thousands and thousands of shows. And that's been how I've been growing my podcast audience this whole time, because people keep discovering me, hearing about me for the first time, finding value in what I'm sharing, and coming to my podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, to hear more. So that's one great way to grow your podcast audience.
So you are more into guest podcasting than just going to events or promoting on social media.
Listen, right now, I am going to be on 20 other podcasts today. Today.
Ooh.
If I was to go to an event, that would take me all weekend. It would be one event. It just wouldn't be nearly as worth my time. And
Mm,
social media, listen, you got to understand my point here. People on social media, they're not on social media to listen to podcasts. They're not on social media to be on social media. People who listen to podcasts are listening to podcasts. You need to find people who are already consuming that platform. Convert the converted.
mm, love it. So, one of the unique things I notice is about you is that you don't really utilize any other social media platform. You just, I mean, like you just post your 1 minute clip on your Instagram and your whole interviews on your YouTube channel. So, you know, how are you going to bring listeners if you don't really use social media platform?
Because social media is not a way to grow listeners. People don't go to social media to find podcasts. They don't go to social media to listen to podcasts. So I put it there because why not? I'm just going to repurpose my content because I might as well. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to go where people are already listening to podcasts, which is on other podcasts. Social media is not the place to grow your audience.
Mm. Wow. Okay. So you have two shows, right? Entrepreneurs on Fire and the Daily Fire, right? So when is it the right time to start a new show?
When your systems and your processes are at a place where you feel very comfortable that you're able to say to yourself, the show that I have started, my one show right now is as
Mm-hmm.
good as it can be. It's the best it can possibly be because I've done a bunch of interviews. I've just worked at honing my craft, and now I'm ready to branch out and to add a secondary show because I know my audience wants this because they've asked for it. So I think you definitely want to at least have 3 years of focusing on your one core show, getting your systems, your processes down, honing your skills as a podcast host, feeling really good about where you're at with your podcast before you move forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So, one of the main objection that I had before starting a podcast was thinking that my voice is not good enough because I never had any experience in broadcasting or being a radio DJ. So, for me doing this is really out of place. So, but finally I launched it. So, what's your advice to the people that have the same belief as I was?
Well, number one, every single human being does not like the sound of their voice. Anybody who tells you they like the sound of their voice is lying to you. They don't. They
Oh.
don't like the sound of their voice. So, welcome to being a human being. You don't like your
Mm-hmm.
voice. Now, stop using that as a silly excuse. And I'm not talking to you directly, obviously, because you got over it, but I'm talking to your listeners that are having that same thing holding them back because it's ridiculous. None of us like our voices. All of us have doubts and fears, and the imposter syndrome is there for every single person. But guess what? Either stop having that false sense of fear and hope and launch something meaningful,
Mm-hmm.
or keep letting that hold you back and keep living a life of mediocrity. I mean, like, do you want to keep going down the current path that you're going down in life? If the answer is yes, then keep doing the same thing. If you want to change, if you want to strive towards lifestyle freedom, location freedom, financial freedom, if you want those things and you don't currently have them, well, it's time to get outside of your comfort zone because all of the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. So I know you're comfortable staying home all
Mm-hmm.
day in your little dark room, playing video games, talking to nobody, risking nothing, staying comfortable, not, potentially failing. I get it. And guess what? That's how 99% of humanity will live their lives. And yet they'll regret it when they're about to die, but it'll be too late
Mm-hmm.
then. But for the 1% of us who say, you know what? I'm scared. I'm not good at podcasting. I don't like my voice. I think I'm going to fail, but I'm going to try it anyways. Those are the people that actually at least have a chance to succeed. And what more do you want in life than a chance?
Mm-hmm. Right. So, we are close to an end today. So, John, what's your final takeaway that our listeners can really get from our chat today?
Biggest takeaway is this: try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. That's an Albert Einstein quote. And I know a lot of people that are watching this are like me 10 years ago. I was chasing success. I was trying to find ways to become successful financially, a winner. I was trying to get respect and fame, and I was doing it all wrong. Because when I took a step back and I actually listened to the words in that quote,
Mm-hmm.
try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. And I asked myself, well, what am I doing of actual value? And I came up empty. Well, that made me realize I needed to change my entire philosophy. I needed to become a person of value. And that's where I came up with the idea to launch a daily podcast that was free, that was valuable because I was interviewing successful entrepreneurs, and was consistent. It was every single day. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when I started to find success because I was focusing on being a person of value. So those would be my final words. And if you want to learn more about me, check out eofire.com. That's our website. We have a bunch of free courses for entrepreneurs on podcasting, coming up with your big idea, creating your first funnel. They're all free. And of course, my podcast is Entrepreneurs on Fire. Give it a listen.
All right. Go check out eofire.com. And yeah, so John, thank you for sharing your ideas and insights with us. Really happy to have you here.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, brother. Take care.
All right. Bye. Yes. And to the listeners, I'll catch you another time. Oh, wow.